Welcome to day one of 30 Teams 30 Days, a series I'm doing this September previewing every team for the upcoming 2024 NBA season. It'll be kind of similar to NBA TV's 30 Teams in 30 Days, but this is my version of the series, and I'm going to talk about every team, preview every team for this season, and we're going to start with the Atlanta Hawks because I think the Hawks are about to take a leap this season and climb up the Eastern Conference standings. But before we talk about the Hawks, think about subscribing. It's free, it's easy. If you don't like the content, you can always unsubscribe later, that's fine. Without further ado, let's just get into it and let's talk about Atlanta. So to understand what to expect this season, we have to get a glimpse at last season. In 2023, Atlanta finished 41-41, exactly 500, good enough for 7th in the Eastern Conference. They didn't have any All-Stars. Trae was a snub last season, a lot of people would say, and Dejounte Murray also didn't make it after making it the year prior. They had two 20-point-per-game scorers in Trae Young and Dejounte Murray, with Dejounte being at like 20.2 and Trae easily clearing the number. They stayed around 500 all season long. They were basically the epitome of mid, sat around 500 for like 20 straight games or more. It was a ridiculous kind of number that they were within one game of 500 for basically half the season. It felt like it probably wasn't quite that long, but the Hawks were always around 500 last year. But it was their first year with Trae and Dejounte. They traded, I believe, 4 first-round picks. It might have been 3 firsts in a swap, but for Dejounte the year prior, because they believed they would jump up the Eastern Conference, but they didn't last season. And they lost to the Celtics in round 1 in 6 games, but many thought it'd be a sweep, so I actually think it was a good sign of what I saw in the playoffs. I liked what I saw. But let's talk about their offseason. So before we can get into the players and why I think they're going to take a leap, we have to understand what's different from last year. So they lost John Collins, their longtime starting power forward, as well as a guard in Aaron Holiday, who would get some occasional minutes here and there. They added Kobe Buffkin, a combo guard, can play point and shooting guard with the 13th overall pick, as well as adding point guard Patty Mills, who's a good veteran, shooting guard Wes Matthews, and center Mohamed Goye in the second round of this year's NBA draft. But let's talk about the real reason the Hawks will improve. Let's get into that right away, because it's the head coach. It's head coach Quin Snyder, a 382 and 275 record in the league as a head coach for a winning percentage of 58%. Pretty good, better than the Hawks were last season. 56 years old, is a 9-year head coach, 8 of which were with Utah, 4-time Western Conference Coach of the Month, 2nd in Coach of the Year voting in 2018, coached star-level players like Gordon Hayward, Donovan Mitchell, and Rudy Gobert, and had some success doing so as teams often overachieved, is known to be liked by his players. The Jazz often had very good defenses. You could attribute that to Rudy Gobert if you want to, that's fair, but they also were very good offensively, and that's something he's going to bring to the Hawks because he focuses on ball movement. Passing the ball, which is something that Trae Young is going to really excel from, because oftentimes the Hawks offense before he got there would kind of stall in the hands of Trae and Dejounte, but with a focus on ball movement, I think it's going to completely change what this team does, and it's going to create a lot more easy opportunities for Atlanta and give them a lot more chances to put the ball in the basket because they're going to have more open looks, and his teammates are going to be happier because less people are going to be sitting around. They're going to be getting the ball in their hands. But let's move past the coach and talk about the players, because the players also, obviously make a huge impact. And if they're not performing, then how good the coach is isn't really going to matter. So when you're talking about the Hawks, you obviously have to start with the guard duo, the star guards, Trae and Dejounte. First, we'll look at Trae Young, point guard of the team, 5th overall pick in 2018, famously traded for Luka Doncic on draft night, 24-year-old star guard. He is a star, whether you want to say it or not. 26 points per game last year, 10 assists and 3 rebounds per game, as well as 1.1 steals. Is a little better at getting steals than people might think. 2-time All-Star in his second season, and then 2 years ago, but is a player who is an all-star level talent, and if his team is good, he's going to make the all-star game pretty much every time. He's a great passer, one of the best passers in the league, was top 3 in assists per game last season, and he will look better in Quin Snyder's system. He just will. I think with the ball movement, it's going to take less forced shots from Trae, which maybe we've seen too much of in the past, and if you can get him to take shots in the rhythm of the offense and to take good looks, I think it's going to help him become much more efficient. But the biggest question is if his three-point percentage can return to his 2022 level of 38%. If you're shooting at the volume that Trae shoots threes and you're doing it at 38%, you're going to be a very valuable player. If you're doing it at that volume, you don't often expect like 40% from three, but if you're doing it at 38, you're going to make a very positive impact. Whereas last year was more around 30, or at least low 30s. It started the year in the 20s, but it got better as the year went on. But if Trae can return to about 38%, it'll really help raise the offense and just lift the team overall. But the other star guard is Dejounte Murray, who's also a point guard, if we're being honest, both point guards. But Dejounte will probably play the two for Atlanta. Is a 26-year-old near star guard, has made an all-star team, but calling him a star seems somewhat unwarranted. He's right on the edge of being considered a star-level player, but is very good. 20.5 points per game last season, 6.1 assists, and 5.3 rebounds per game, as well as 1.5 steals per game. Just a very good all-around player. Was an all-star in 2022, as well as being the steals champ that year, leading the league in steals per game. Extremely well-rounded, good passer, good defender, good rebounder for a guard, and a good scorer. He just does pretty much everything that you want in a player to do. He's not going to be the lead player in your offense, but he's going to be a very good one. Still a very good defender, despite some of the injuries that he's had. Hasn't made an all-defensive team since like 2018, I believe. It's been a while, but Dejounte is still a good defensive guard. And I think he should mesh better with Trae in year 2 of their pairing. I think in the second year of these guys together, it's going to look better than it did in year 1, and I think they're going to have a better rhythm with each other, because even as the year went on, you could see the chemistry really start to build. They're having fun together on the court, and if that continues, then they're going to be a better team. Will his numbers rise closer to the 2022 level? I think that's going to be a big question, because they're going to be guys trying to replace the kind of production of John Collins, and can DeJounte kind of eat up some of those numbers and return to his, all-star form in 2022? We'll see. That's the biggest question with him. When we look at the other starters, though, there's 3 guys that I think are pretty likely to be starters, so we'll talk about each of them in kind of a little bit of detail. Starting with small forward DeAndre Hunter, who a lot of people at one point thought would be a star, but I don't think that's probably going to happen at this point. But is a very good wing defender. 15 points per game last season, 1.5 assists and 4 rebounds, 52% effective field goal percentage. I believe it's above league average. I think league average is right around 50. If you're over 50, by a decent bit, you're a pretty good effective player, and I think he is. So is a good defender and an effective offensive player. He can score a little bit, but not really a self-creator, and due to that, he'll likely never take the leap to be a 20-point per game scorer like some expected, but that's okay, because he's not going to be this great dominant offensive force, but I do think that he's going to be a good offensive player and an effective one. So when you pair that with his defense, it makes for a good wing stopper, a good starter on the wing. Can he take a slight step forward to replace some of Collins' production? Maybe he takes a leap towards like 17 and 6, but it wouldn't shock me if he puts up very similar numbers next season. Clint Capela, I think, is one of the most underrated bigs in the league. 29-year-old big man is currently in his prime, 12 and 11 last season on top of 1.2 blocks per game, 65% from the field, kind of a traditional big man, but is a double-double machine. He gets double-doubles with ease, obviously, because he's averaging it, but when you have a player like that that's super valuable, is a great pick-and-roll partner for both Trae and DeJounte, and is quietly an elite rim protector. I don't think it gets talked about enough, but Clint Capela is a very good rim protector and really can help to kind of transform this Hawks defense if Snyder knows how to utilize him well, which I think he does, because he did that with Gobert. Gobert, obviously a better rim protector than Clint Capela, but if you take, a slightly lesser version in Capela and make him the center of your defense down low while having a wing stopper in Hunter, I think that can really help you. I think they'll be a good defensive team. He's quietly an elite rim protector and is a solid starting center. He's not a top 10 center, but he's probably right around average. I think he's a good starting center. A lot of people are trying to kind of push him out of town to get Okongwu as the starting center, but I think they should try to appreciate Capela while they have him, because whether they think Okongwu is going to be better or not, which he probably is, Clint Capela is a good starting center. He doesn't really have any upside, though. I think what we're seeing now is the best version of Capela. And then the last guy who's probably going to start for them is Saddiq Bey, who they acquired at the trade deadline last season. Still just 24 years old, is pretty young, honestly, in terms of NBA years. Often don't hit your prime till about 27. So 14 points per game last season, 5 rebounds and 1.5 assists. Shot 40% from 3 with Atlanta. A lot of people have often thought of Saddiq Bey as an inefficient player, which for a lot of his career has been true. Of 40% from 3 with the team, if he can keep that up, he's going to be super valuable and will more than earn the starting spot because of the scoring he provides with the efficient shooting. He was traded, I believe, I'm trying to think of who was dealt. I don't think it was the Knox deal, but James Wiseman was part of the deal. It was Saddiq Bey going from the Pistons to the Hawks, and Wiseman went from the Warriors to the Pistons in that deal. Had a lot of teams in it, but he does have a 50-point game. One of those random 50 pieces does belong to Saddiq Bey, and is just a natural scorer, is a bucket getter, and he could step up into some of the scoring left behind by Collins. Can he become an adequate defender and team player is going to be the big thing. Can he, be a little better of a passer, be a little less selfish, and be a good defender, because that'll really take him up a notch and help the team get to where they want to go. But let's talk about now the potential Collins replacements, because they're losing a starting power forward. They're losing, like 15 points and 7 rebounds a game, and they didn't really replace it. So who's going to step up into a bigger role next season? I think the Hawks have one of the most glaring positions for a player to step up into a bigger role next season, and I think they have 3 guys who can really do that and potentially make that move up into a bigger player. And I want to start with Jalen Johnson, who I really like. I really liked what I saw from him towards the end of last season when Snyder became the coach. I think he likes Jalen Johnson, and so do I from what I've seen. Only 21 years old, entering his 3rd season, is younger than plenty of rookies coming in this year, is just a kind of a very gifted, talented player who came in pretty raw, was a top recruit going to Duke and was solid there, but hasn't really done much for the Hawks to this point. He's had limited opportunity, but very impressive in stretches. 6 points per game, 4 rebounds, and 1 assist last season, but per 36 was 14 points, 10 rebounds, and 3 assists. So if given an opportunity, we could really see him step up. He's a good rebounder for a forward and is a kind of natural isolation scorer, kind of Carmelo Anthony-esque, not quite that high level, but is an athletic big forward who can get his own shot. Can be a very good scoring forward if they allow him to be. I think he could be like a 15 point per game guy, and he feels like the highest upside Collins replacement, because Jalen Johnson I think has star potential. It feels unlikely he'll reach that, but he just has a great NBA body, and with his scoring ability on top of everything else he can do at his size, I think he could be a very, very good player for Atlanta. But we'll see if he's the guy to step up, or it could be AJ Griffin, who I know the Hawks like, and when they got rid of Collins, they traded him for kind of pennies on the dollar. It was well known that AJ Griffin was one of the guys who they thought could step up after the good rookie season he had last year. Just turned 20 years old, isn't old at all. Again, still very young, just like Johnson is. 9 points per game, 2 rebounds, and 1 assist last year, but shot 39% from 3. Another kind of efficient wing to put next to Trae and Dejounte that can really help fit alongside them. Is clutch, did have a game winner last season in his rookie year, had some good moments. Hawks fans love the dude. Is a good scorer as well. That's kind of his best attribute, whereas Johnson I think brings some rebounding alongside his scoring. AJ Griffin is kind of just a scorer and a shooter, but he does the things well, which is something that obviously is a kind of valuable skill in the NBA, and is known to be well liked by the Hawks staff. That's all that's been talked about all summer, is that AJ Griffin is a guy that they really believe in and can take a step forward next season. Then they have center Onyeka Okongwu, is the current backup behind Capela, younger and cheaper than Capela, which again is why a lot of people want to move on. Hawks fans love him. You know, he's one of the guys they've really loved since he was drafted. He's one of the guys that played with the Ball brothers in Chino Hills, 22 years old, going into, I believe, his 4th season. So again, another guy who's pretty young for his draft class. 10 points per game, 7 rebounds, and 1.3 blocks in kind of limited minutes. It was only like 23 minutes a game, and he was putting up pretty solid numbers. 64% from the field. Is a pretty similar player to Capela, but Okongwu offers you a little more offensive upside, which I think is what a lot of people are looking at. 15 points per 36 to go along with 11 rebounds and 2 blocks, slightly better than what Jalen Johnson just had per 36, as I mentioned. Definitely needs more opportunity, but I just don't know if you can really play Okongwu and Capela together. So it's not like Okongwu, I don't think, can really easily step into a starting role where Collins was. I think right now that's Saddiq Bey's spot, but if another guy really leaps, they could take that. I just find it hard to believe that Okongwu could take that spot. Does he take Capela's spot at some point? Maybe, but taking Collins' spot for him feels weird. I just think the fit with him and Capela could be kind of clunky, but he does have a little bit of spacing. He can hit in the mid-range, so maybe it could work, but I don't love the fit of the two together. And there are a couple other reserves I wanted to talk about just because it felt like it'd be wrong to overlook them. One of them being Bogdan Bogdanovic, who's balling in the World Cup right now with Serbia. Could be the team's 6th man, is a great scoring punch off the bench. Quietly already 31 years old. I think is a good bit older than a lot of people would expect. Me personally, I think he's like 27, but is 31. 14 points per game last season, 3 rebounds and 3 assists, 41% from 3, again another sniper. The Hawks have plenty of them. They could, under Snyder, be one of the best shooting teams in the league next season. Is someone who could start some games for the team here and there, kind of spot starts at the shooting guard or small forward if people are injured, whatever it is, but has impressed a lot with Serbia in the World Cup. I believe they're 3-0 in group play, and a lot of that is thanks to Bogdanovic, who's been very good. He's a good scorer, isn't going to be a star player, but could start some games here and there, and I like Bogdanovic. He could be a very high-level 6-man for the Hawks and a very valuable rotation guy. He could be finishing a lot of games even if he's not starting them, because he's someone that Coach Quin Snyder can really trust. Patty Mills, point guard. I love this addition for them. I know he's old. Very solid backup point guard, veteran presence. He's 35, not 25. He's 35 years old. Was on some very good Spurs teams, you know, the great dynasty Spurs teams, learned under Pop. 37% from 3 last season, is a solid floor spacer and is impressing with Australia in the World Cup again. He continues to do this every international time, but it can never really be harnessed at the NBA level for whatever reason. But maybe Quin Snyder can help release some of that FIBA excellence in the NBA, but even if not, he's going to be a very good mentor, veteran presence, and just help guys like Trae and Dejounte, who are still kind of young, entering their stardom era, to help kind of adjust to that, because he played with Kawhi, he played with Duncan, and he knows what being a star in the NBA takes and can help them reach that. But let's talk about their projected starting lineup, who I think, you know, kind of will be the starters and the role guys for this team. To me, the starting lineup for the Hawks will be Trae, Dejounte, Hunter, Saddiq Bey, and Clint Capela, with Patty Mills, Bogdan, AJ Griffin, Jalen Johnson, and Okongwu being the backup 5, being the second unit. I think Patty Mills gets the edge over Bufkin, even though Bufkin was a lottery pick. I just think Patty Mills is a guy who has so much veteran presence, could really be reliable for the team, but Bufkin could step up ahead of him. That wouldn't shock me either. And Bruno Fernando, I wanted to include him because he's been so good in this year's World Cup. But let's talk about what to expect in 2024. On the low end, they are a play-in team, but just missed the playoffs. I think it's nearly impossible this Hawks team misses the play-in. I think they are that good. I think they have too much talent to miss the play-in tournament, but they could be in it and get a tough draw and lose, I guess. But on the high end, I think they could finish with a top 4 seed and make the second round. Trae Young has been to an Eastern Conference Finals before, has taken the Hawks there on an underdog run, and they have a more talented team right now, I'd say, than they did then. So the Hawks, to me, are a team that can overachieve, especially with a great coach. The team will look consistently better next season than they did this season. They clearly are focusing on setting both an identity of unselfishness and a winning culture with Quin Snyder, because of the ball movement, because of everything he's practiced in his previous spots. I think he's going to help take them to the next level. Expect at least one all-star in Trae Young. If they get closer to the higher end, like a top 4 seed, it could be both Trae and DeJounte Murray. And I think the Hawks could really take advantage of uncertainty surrounding the 76ers, Heat, and Cavs. The Sixers right now have the weird stuff with Harden wanting off the team. He doesn't want to be there, but he is their second best player. The Heat don't have Damian Lillard. They lost a couple key guys in free agency. And the Cavs, while being a really good defensive team, still do have some offensive concerns. But regardless of exactly what happens, this team is going to be fun and much less ball hoggy than they were last year. There's going to be ball movement, and I think they're going to take a leap up the standings because of Quin Snyder and because of guys like Johnson, Griffin, Okongwu who can take leaps. Saddiq Bey is going to be good for them. Bogdanovic is going to be good for them. They have a lot of talent around the outsides, and I think Trae and DeJounte are going to fit better together in year 2 than they did in year 1. So the Hawks are a team to me that's going to take a leap next season. They're going to finish better than 7th, and they're going to be better than 500. I really like the Hawks going into next season, and they're one of my favorite teams to overachieve next year because of Trae at the top as a star. Trae is a star, and I like DeJounte as a second fiddle. Isn't a great first guy. That Spurs team wasn't good with him as the main guy, but as the second guy, I like that. A lot of upside young guys, great coach, and just a lot of shooting and some guys who can really play defense. I think the Hawks are going to take a leap and expect them to be a much better team this season. That's it for the first episode of 30 Teams, 30 Days, talking about the Hawks. Be sure to tune in every day to get an in-depth breakdown of every team in the NBA. Thanks for watching. Think about subscribing. I'm trying to hit 10K. That's it for me. Peace.